Welcome back, guys. So one thing I've done is I took my little ball here, glass ball here, moved it to the corner so that we don't start off the game by overlapping it. And I'm just going to play. I'm just going to show you where it's at. So obviously there's some space for us to move before we hit it, and the overlap happens. And as you can see in the blueprint, I have kind of deleted the actor hit. So it's just going to be purely overlap from now on. So here's what I want to do, right? I call this fire spawner because I actually want to spawn a fire. So I'm going to drag the exec pin, and I'm going to use a command, or rather some code, to do spawn emitter at location. So you might think, well, Varun, how do you know what code to use where? And like I told you, that's practice, right? Unreal basically has this big library of different functions, and this F here stands for function, right? Which kind of allows you to run this whenever you're necessary. So it's got all the details necessary to run some code, right? So in this emitter template, we are going to choose the fire, right? And you might say, where does this come from? And I say, well, the answer to that is that this comes from the starter content. Remember, we included the starter content. So just like we had some base materials to work with for our textures, we have some base particles to use. You can make your own particles in Unreal using something called the Niagara system, but that comes much later in the tutorial because it's not that important to us. So I'm just going to select fire, right? And that's it. Well, let's just see, let's spawn a fire. So I'm going to play. Well, where's the fire? And you can see the fire has been spawned at the center of the map, which is really strange. It should have spawned here, right? Well, the reason it spawned at the center of the map is because the location input into it was 0, 0, 0, which is the exact center of the map, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure the fire is spawned at the player's location. We don't want the fire to spawn at some random location, right? So what we're going to do, and to get the player location, first we need to get the player's actor. Remember, when you press play and I move around, this actor, which is the actual player, he's also somebody that's spawned into the kind of map. We need to get that person's location and rotation. To do that, we're going to use a command called get player character. Get player character is a way to get the actual player's character, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get actor location. I want his location, and I want his rotation. Again, over time you will be using all these commands, like you'll know exactly how to get the player character and how to get his location and rotation. This is a very common kind of pattern that you'll use. I'm going to drag both these in. Now, one thing I need to tell you about this is that when you're getting actor location and when you're getting actor rotation, these are values, these are vector values, and you're feeding them into this function which is spawn emitter at location. Now, the thing is, you might ask, well, there's no execution pin to this, Varun, right? The execution is from here to here. How did this come into play? And the answer to that is that when you have this spawn emitter at location, when it reaches here, whenever the execution reaches here and it has some inputs, the inputs are then calculated. So in a way, it is, even though this looks like it's, this should lead into this, the truth is that this is summoning this, right? It's a different way to look at it. So it's going to spawn at the player's location using the player's rotation. I'm just going to save it. Press play. Bam, right? But when we move away, obviously the fire doesn't stick to the player. It's just spawned at that location, and well, now the player's moved on. To do that, to fix that, instead of using spawn emitter at location, we're going to use something else called spawn emitter attached, right? Which is slightly different. Now this has more inputs, right? So we're going to take all this. When we spawn the emitter at location, we use the actor location, the actor rotation. But now we're not going to spawn it at any location or rotation. We're going to spawn it on the actor himself, on the main character himself. So what we do is, from the main character, remember the main character, just like this one, is a blueprint. It's got a lot of components here, and we need one very specific component called the mesh. We need the actual mesh, right? So we'll say get mesh, right? And we scroll down, and we will just get the character mesh, right? So this is the actual mesh of the character, which is, if I were looking into this blueprint, then, well, it's, maybe sphere 1 or sphere, just like that, there's a mesh. I'm pulling out that mesh, and that's the component I want to attach to. Now, the attach point name, I've input spine 01 here, and this is because I already know what are the different points in that mesh, in the character's mesh, in fact in the character's skeleton, and we'll go over that in the future, but I just want to kind of run you through this. And I'll click on snap to target, keep world scale, so that it constantly snaps to the character. I'm going to save, we'll press play, bam, we have our character on fire, and he's going to continue to be on fire. And I'm going to die while still burning. Well, that's about it for this episode. I mean, if the location and rotation, which we had originally spawned the particles at, is great for things like sparks or even a fire, you know, if you've activated some switch, but you don't need the location and rotation if you're doing get player character and then taking the mesh and then attaching to that component. And the point name at which, you know, of the mesh which it's attached at is spine 01. Again, when we start learning character animation, we start learning about character meshes, you'll realize that, you know, there's some very specific bone names that you can attach to, and you can create new characters with new bones, but we'll go through that later in the series. Thanks for joining on. Bye-bye.